verdict is in. I'm suspended in a cradle of living silk, thick and impossibly strong. My limbs won't respond, paralyzed by a subtle venom I've been breathing in the air. Before me, she dominates the cavern, a living mountain of iridescent chitin and shadow. Queen Xylara, the matriarch of this biopunk nightmare, unfurls all 8 of her obsidian eyes. 1,000 clicks echo. Her voice isn't sound, it's a cold, invasive pressure flooding my mind. She resonates, the telepathic word precise, cold, and final. Is chosen. 1,000 smaller Arachne warriors shift, their armored legs creating a dry, whispering thunder of approval. She isn't choosing to kill me. Not yet, she's choosing me as something else. I am her prize. I was a xenobiologist, chief surveyor on the deep space vessel Odyssey. Now I am meat, a specimen, trapped in a citadel of woven flesh and hardened silk. How did a simple survey mission strand me in this abyssal throne room, awaiting the judgment of a monster queen? The answer is buried in fire, orbital debris, and a fatal miscalculation. We were 3 days out from classifying the planet, cataloged as XB774. The Odyssey was state-of-the-art, but the anomaly that ripped us from orbit wasn't on any chart. It was a localized gravity shear, a silent wave that tore the ship's spine in two before the alarms even finished their first chime. The sound of tearing metal. I was in the bio lab. My harness failed, but the bulkhead around me did not. I remember the scream of escaping atmosphere, a vortex of soil samples and containment units. Then the impact, a brutal final percussion that ended everything. I woke up choking on air that was too thick, too humid, tasting of copper and fungal spores. The escape pod, or what was left of it, was a tomb. The biomonitors for the rest of the crew. Flatlined. All of them. I was the sole survivor, but survival was a temporary state. This world was a biopunk nightmare, a jungle that pulsed with its own life. Giant, glowing fungi pulsed with sickly green light, casting shadows that moved. The air was a filter of spores, and the ground itself seemed to breathe beneath my boots. Then came the hunt. It didn't start with a roar, but with a click. A sharp, articulate sound, like obsidian striking obsidian, echoing from the canopy above. I ran, fueled by primal terror, my pulse rifle lost in the crash. I was no longer a scientist, I was prey, and my predators were masters of this domain. They were shadows, 8-legged and terrifyingly fast, flanking me with chilling intelligence. They didn't try to kill me, not outright. They herded me, drove me deeper into their territory with surgical precision. A day, maybe two. Finally, exhaustion broke like vision at the foot of a great, web-covered effigy. A shape descended, faster than I could react. It wasn't a hunter. It was larger, more deliberate. I felt a sharp, cold prick in my neck, and the world dissolved into a numb, pliable haze. My last sight was of a grotesque, many-eyed face looking at me with cold, detached curiosity. The venom didn't just paralyze, it preserved. The venom didn't just paralyze, it preserved. My world became vertical. The hunters had bound me in a preservation web, leaving only a slit for my eyes and mouth. I was carried aloft, ascending into a canopy so thick it blotted out the alien sun. Below, the glowing fungal forest became a distant, sickly carpet of light. The air grew warmer, more humid, and it carried a new, sharp scent. A high-pitched, resonant chittering from afar. We weren't climbing trees. We were climbing the hive. The structure rose from the forest floor like a monument of disease, a twisted spire of alien design. It was a citadel not of stone, but of hardened, secreted resin, interwoven with thick. This was biopunk architecture on a scale I couldn't comprehend. It was a living city, a testament to a biological technology that processed, lived, and breathed. A great gaping orifice opened, sphincter-like, and we passed from the humid jungle into the hive's heart. My paralysis from the hunt was wearing off, replaced by a deep, aching cold. But the venom had a secondary effect, a horrifying, passive clarity. I was no longer just afraid. I was cataloging. My inner xenobiologist was taking notes. The interior was not dark. It was lit by strains of luminescent algae, cultivated in translucent veins along the walls. The walls themselves were damp, covered in a thin mucus, and I realized with a jolt, the walls were breathing. The entire citadel was a single, symbiotic organism, and the Arachne were its nervous system. It was passed from the hunters, too. Something else. Tenders, I'd call them. Smaller, paler, with delicate, multi-jointed forelimbs. They moved with a gentle, terrifying purpose, adjusting my silk bonds, checking my vital signs with a light brush of their antennae. This wasn't a nest of savage beasts. This was a civilization, as complex. They moved me through different chambers, vast, vaulted caverns, each a separate organ in this city creature. First, the food larders. I saw them dragging the massive, glowing fungi I'd seen in the forest. They weren't. The air grew heavy, the venom in it thickening again, making my thoughts syrupy, my limbs unresponsive. The tenders carried me into a final, vast chamber. It was less a room than a great, organic cathedral. The walls were a lattice of living silk, the floor a soft, pulsating membrane. And in the center, her. Queen Xylara. She was a biological god, a being of impossible scale. She wasn't just sitting on a throne. She was part of it. Cables of living silk, thick as my torso, plugged directly into her thorax, linking her to the citadel itself. Her abdomen, vast and swollen, pulsed with the light of 1,000 gestating lives. She was the Five. The walls were her skin, the tenders her hands, the warrior was laid out before her, a sacrifice on a living altar. The tenders unwrapped the web from my face, exposing me fully. Thousands of smaller Arachnes lined the walls, clinging to the silk, a silent, watching army. I was the first new thing they had seen in generations. A new genetic code. A male. An alien. Her eyes opened. Not just the 8 on her face. Dozens of smaller, compound eyes embedded in her armored carapace, swiveled to focus on me. Her mind. Touch mine. It was not a gentle probe. It was an invasion. A cold, systematic cataloging of my every thought, my every fear, my entire biology. I felt her learn. She sifted through my memories of the Odyssey. The crash. My terror in the jungle. She absorbed the concept of human, of male, of alone. And in that invasive, silent communion, it was the look of a scientist finding a new, bizarre. It was the look of a monarch finding a new, useful tool. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced. The interest of a god queen. The pressure in my skull built. The thousands of warriors clicked in unison, a sound like a hailstorm. They were waiting for her command. To consume, to study. Breath. To keep. The silence stretched, filled only by the pulsing of the hive and the cold weight of her gaze. And I, the soft, strange, two-legged mammal, represented something she hadn't possessed.